Welcome back, Pirate Crew. It's your captain, Yeehaw Yadam, and welcome back to another video on this week's series, Road to the Treasure Cup, where I am joined by guest star, guest friend, no, actually real friend, Fernando Freeman Fuentes. So he's going to be here, and he's going to be helping us dissect blue. Now, this is the blue list they decided to show, and he said one of the 5 decks that we think can beat the cup. We started thinking about Crocodile. How crazy is that, man? How do you feel about this Crocodile list?
To me, is honestly just criminally underrated how little people play Crocodile for how broken he is. I think that Crocodile actually gives himself a lot of inevitability in the game because he's one of the only decks that can get to 10 Dawn and then recycle its Dawn to get some sort of value. So in the same way that Purple does it. So he's one of the only characters that can do that, and therefore he has to have a crazy late game. And I feel like he shows that in this list.
No, most certainly, and I completely agree with you. So there's a lot of decks, red specifically and green, that they just get to 10 Dawn and then they're capped at 10 Dawn. Their power doesn't get any stronger, their power doesn't get any weaker. Whereas purple and blue, they can start minusing Dawn to get that bonus value, right? They can extend the game and get to eventual marks. And then when they do these effects, these -4 Dawn, they're very heavy costs, but the gains are very, very good. Purple is burn a life, which is very aggressive, whereas blue is very tempo setting as you burn 4 to bounce a 5-drop or lower, which is a good portion of the game. So with that being said, let's get right to the list. And we also have, for those of you that are not Crocodile enthusiasts, if we haven't converted you towards the Church of Crocodile, we do have a Flamingo list that we're going to also dissect immediately right after, because we do think that 90% of the cards are about the same, but we'll get to it. So starting off, take it away.
Yeah, so for sure. So one of the main reasons to play Crocodile, aside from tucking the Dawn to be able to get extra effect, is Miss All Sunday. Miss All Sunday is potentially the craziest card in all of blue, like by a significant margin. The card's insane. And one of the main reasons why aggro matchups are so easy for you, I wouldn't say easy, but very manageable, is because Miss All Sunday just takes over the game in the mid to late game. Coupling Miss All Sunday, we have Sentamaru, which we're basically gonna make a Sentamaru church video here. The card is just kind of crazy.
I think we all just forgot how crazy it was. It's been a bit since the limited battle series. New players have joined in. There's new, fresh, shiny cards that I want to look and play, and I just forgot how unbelievably unbalanced Sentamaru is. But we'll get to that. Let's keep going.
So yeah, so definitely that's our low end curve. Focus on defending us with the 1-drop to Falder, very standard. Alvida at 2, a little bit less seen, but essentially blue is always notorious for having too few 2K guards, and we want to kind of mitigate that by adding a few Alvidas just to have a little bit more defense in the mid game. Helps our card survive maybe some attacks that the opponent says, oh, this card is definitely dead if I just swing for 6 or 5. And then we Alvida them, and we're in a better spot. So super important to play her at some amount. We also have the Pacifistas for the Sentamaru, a card that is not universally used by everybody, but makes your aggro matchups infinitely easier. Forces out pistols is Boa Hancock. So definitely a card that's a little bit also less played than what it should. I think it should be a staple for how good it is.
No, that card can definitely on the defense, right? So just think about it. If I can play Boa Hancock, defend aggressively with my hand, and then use her as a block, defend her, draw card, I just eventually outdraw you. And that's the reason that blue-purple Crocodile initially is so good. We didn't make it. I don't think we're this week we decided to make a video because that deck is very niche, very high skill ceiling, and requires a lot to really, in our opinion, like push through the top echelons of the format. But Boa Hancock is one of the reasons that kind of facilitates that blue-purple Crocodile feel, where you're double dipping because of the love beams, the Boa Hancocks, and eventually those draws are advantage, right? Those are combo power. Those are characters that you can summon. Those are more cards that you're seeing in your deck, and cards are also, like Dawn, power. So Boa Hancock facilitates that, and she also has that magic number threshold of 5K. The only thing is that 5K blockers aren't necessarily real blockers because you have to add some oomph to really block with them. But the fact that Boa Hancock on attack and on defense gets you to draw a card is really, really good. If you combo her off with Love Beam, you'll draw 2, and then you're off to the races. Not only that, but we do also have other value engines in this deck in forms of Gecko Moria. Gecko Moria just cycling your your Boa Hancocks, your Draco Mihawks, as well as your Laws is so good. Law, it becomes an honorary, Gecko Moria becomes an honorary 5-drop blocker sometimes. That's, again, something that we remember from the limited battle series. So another effective way to use 5 Dawn, you go Gecko, add Law, play Virgo, and then -4 off the Crocodile. Now you have a 10 mana turn that looks very, very clean, very, very pleasant to the eyes. And then just look at that top end. Look at that top end, Fernando. What are we? Look at this. It's 4-4-3-3, baby. What's going on?
So definitely, if you know me, you know I love 4-ofs. If I can play 4-ofs to the highest of their capacity, I will. This is the closest thing to the late game that we can get to 4-ofs. Basically, 4 Virgo, 4 Crocodile, and then three of the 7-drop, 3 of the 9-drop. The reason we play Virgo, and it might not be popularized yet, but he's essentially the only, or one of the only ways to even dream about beating green, and he does it pretty well, to be honest. So basically the way that it works is you want to try to curve out with as many 7k attackers and Draco Mihawks, if you have the time for it, in the green matchup, because you just need to hit the number 8 against them, because blue doesn't have a natural answer to the 8-drop kid. So
Exactly. So to beat the 8 drop, you just have to consistently put the 8 pressure on them, and then also be able to defend. And a card that does that very, very well is the 7-drop Crocodile, that when it hits for 8, it also keeps that Dawn under it and uses that Dawn to dip on defensive spells such as Love Beam and Overheat that you can recycle off of your Missile Sundays. So you want to, again, as Fernando was alluding to, get all these 7Ks up. Pair them with a couple of 1K blockers such as Missile Sunday and Law, and then put your Dawn as sparingly as possible to get through their board. And then if you can, use your Crocodile effect to, bounce their Law to hand, so that then you can go ahead and push through their 8-drop without them using their blockers, and also not give them combo power. Centaumeru, another really good way about being able to create threats versus green. If you can curve out the Centaumeru and get 2 of the Pacifistas, 3 of the Pacifistas out of your deck, even though they're 5 to 6k respectively, the 6k is a little bit easier to get to 8 than a 5k, right? 3 Dawn investment is way more than a 2. I don't think I would go more than 2 to try to get over this kid, because then effectively you're losing out on what your character can do. And definitely versus aggro, let's not scoff at the fact that 7-drop Flamingo into Mihawk, and 7-drop Flamingo into Mihawk is not going to stop them from continuing the aggro. You can go Flamingo. When you're at 10 mana, you can Flamingo, use the Centaumeru ability to summon a blocker from the deck, and then use Crocodile's effect to bounce again. So you can bounce, and summon a blocker for 10 Dawn. That is unbalanced versus red. And then if you can pair that up with maybe some follow-up in the Mihawks, and you're just in a good board state from there. But let's say that you're not a Crocodile enjoyer. All right, that's fine. Flamingo is a really cool guy. I'm no hate towards Flamingo, and in the series, he's my favorite villain. He is so good. That this Rosa arc, if you guys haven't seen it, do yourselves a favor and watch it. He's super duper cool, and definitely a fan favorite card. But his deck is, again, basically the same deck. We just have to tweak a couple cards around. We lose our Missile Sunday, which kind of sucks. But Missile Sunday really sucks. But honestly, Don Quixote do Flamingo blocker is honestly a very good card. We up our blocker counts. Well, actually, it's the same because they're both blockers. But this one serves a different purpose. It gets to stack your deck. And funnily enough, stacking your deck is really good when you're looking for very specific cards, such as Centaumeru, the Mihawks. You can bottom deck the cards that you need in certain matchups, and you can just use the Centaumeru to, you look at the top 5 off your Flamingo. You can get to the Centaumeru and then use the cards you want off the top of the deck, and then Centaumeru the top away, and then Perona look at it again. And then now you're cycling through your deck really, really well. So that's something that's really nice about this deck, and really is just clean. All the changes we made were basically adding Flamingo as well as Perona, while changing up a bit, and then the top end, the only thing that took a hit were the Crocodile and the Virgo, unfortunately.
So basically, the main difference between one build versus the other one, or I should say one leader versus the other leader, is what matchups do you want to be favored against over the course of a long tournament. So obviously, the reason why we can shave a little bit of the end game here is because the DoFlamingo leader itself accrues a lot more card advantage. So the control matchups depend more on him, and as a result, they're a little bit easier. This deck suffers a lot more against the red matchups simply because of the lack of all Sunday recurring the Love Beam. It's a little less defensive, And no, conversely, though, you still have that Centaur engine in combination with your leader accruing a little bit of card advantage by forcing them to attack your tapped characters. So you can still mitigate some of the red matchup, but for the most part, the Crocodile leader is good against aggro decks, and the DoFlamingo leader is good against control decks. That's essentially the bare bones of it.
Yeah, that's an easy way to put it. And honestly, it's a very clean way of looking at the situation. They're both very good leaders, and blue by no means is a bad deck. It just sometimes struggles versus that green matchup, which makes it a little bit harder. So that's why we hyper focus on these 7 drops, and in order to make sure that that matchup gets answered. Right. So, but besides that, let's talk about a couple cards that we want to keep in every specific matchup. So, starting off with the aggro matchups, the cards that you want to keep look a little much like this. Depending if you're Crocodile, depending if you're Flamingo, you obviously want to see maybe some assortment of Quixote blocker if you're Flamingo, so you can search the top of the deck, or Perona. But if you're Crocodile, you really don't have any of those specific cards. So what you do want to see is like the Centaumeru. The Centaumeru will then allow you to summon a blocker Pacifista versus aggro, and that's really, really good. If they don't Jet Pistol the Centaumeru, the amount of value this guy's going to do, it's just going to destroy red, in my opinion. It's just going to allow you to get so much board state that then you can just use your hand to defend it, aggressively, and then you can start sitting behind blockers eventually. Not only that, but Boa Hancock. Tell me about that.
Yeah, no. So what makes it pretty wonderful in the way that you're painting it is essentially depending on whether you go first or go second, you have game plans for both scenarios. One key thing to go off of when you go first, you play a 1-drop if you find it, depending on if it's Blocker Law or Perona with Crocodile or DoFlamingo. Then you curve out with Centaumeru, and now, for the red matchup, for example, the purple matchup, they need like something to auto answer the card, or it's going to take over the game naturally, is just what Centaumeru does. But in the case of red, for example, something that should be a natural losing matchup actually becomes a winning matchup, because if they pistol Centaumeru, you can go ahead, Boa Hancock, and then put a Dawn on it, and then all of a sudden, you have control of the board while they haven't developed much. If you're going second, you have 4 Dawn on the second turn of the game, and it opens up a lot of different possibilities, like the ones you see here. So it just gives you a lot of flexibility, regardless of what your opponent chooses to go first or second.
So one thing that I really like about specific cards, right? And I'm gonna talk about something that happens in the future. So Kinemon, right? I don't know if you guys, if you looked into the OP2 meta that's happening in the East. Kinemon is a leader that basically says, he's a green leader that says, if you have 1 or less cards, make your card cost 1 less, right? Your Wano card. So Okiku will cost 1 less. Okiku can then come down for 3 or for 2. They can never come down for 0. But now you've made a card that was once only thought to be coming down on the 3-5 on the odd curve. Now it can come down on the even curve, which opens a lot of possibility. And that's why Centaumeru is such a cool card, because Centaumeru can come down on 3 or it can come down on 6. It's an even or an odd card. It fits both curves, and it's just powerful in both scenarios, right? Because not only in the control matchups, you can summon the 6-drop Pacifista, which then threatens the 8-drop Kid or their big boys, or you can summon blockers versus the aggressive matchups. And now you start getting a card that needs to be answered, or over the course of a couple turns, literally outvalues you. It also fits your curve with your 7-drop. It allows you to get to 10 and use your 10 Dawn super effectively. And like you were saying, if you go 4-drop Boa that needs to get answered and they don't answer, and you can go 6 Centaumeru, you're in a really, really good spot versus aggressive decks. Not only that, but you have a fantastic 7 Warlords of the Sea engine in Gecko Moria. Gecko Moria is another card that allows you to fit the curve so well. It's an even and an odd card. Can come down on 4 and recur of Draco Mihawk 2K, or it can come down on 5 and go 4 add Law, play Law. And you see, when cards are able to fit multiple curves and become so flexible, they become very, very, very good. And that's why I wanted to talk about Centaumeru as well as the Gecko Moria, and obviously Pacifista, as both of the blockers, both the attacker and the blocker Pacifista do very well versus aggro. Into our next matchup. So against control, what are we looking for against the green matchup? So when we say aggro, we're talking more about specifically red and aggressive law variants, right? So we wanted to see those cards. Now versus control, I'm thinking more about versus blue matchups and also versus green. So these are the cards that I think we want to see about green. Fernando, take it away.
Yeah, definitely green, purple, and blue are the more controlling decks. Try to establish, some type of board control, and then show you powerful endgame cards. And against all of those strategies, Centaumeru, essentially, there are outs to it. Nekomushi, comes to mind, things like Jet Pistol, et cetera, et cetera. Who's who if people are playing in the variants, but if it's not answered immediately, it takes over the game, just a fact. And that's why it's so powerful. on the plate specifically.
There's also something
But
said
also,
about having multiples. If you have multiples of it, you can summon it, force interaction, and then it's like, okay, you had answer for the first one. Do you have it on the
here's
second
another
one? And
one.
now here's the issue. And you can, again, let's say you're going on odds, you can put it on 3, or then you can play it on 7, and then keep one up for a law. And it's like, you answered this one, now I fully resolved this one, play a law, and now you're doomed, because now this card is gonna start getting some real value. And that's just the beauty of what Centaumer is. Like, as we were making this deck list, we're just like, man, this card is crazy.
Yes, yeah.
Actually, like, criminally underplayed in our opinion. But and then pairing that up with our great top end in terms of our Virgo that people are very aware of and why we play them, as well as Crocodile, Flamingo, and Mihawk. Any sort of assortment there. If you guys don't want to go 4-4-3-3, you can definitely go like 4-4-2-4, or depending on how really you want to fit your top end. It's completely up to you, and definitely is a personal preference. But definitely we need a heavy top end in order to deal with these. You do need to see them, and that's kind of like the cool thing about Flamingo as opposed to Crocodile. Flamingo can definitely cycle how they want to see their top end, so you can afford to lose top end, whereas Crocodile, you have to pay a heavier top end so you can effectively see them in multiples, because you can't win with one Mihawk. You might not be able to win with 2 Mihawks, but maybe on the third one, we shall get them. So that's basically how it is. And then for our final matchup that we wanted to highlight is the purple matchup. I think purple matchup is really, really hard, right? Because if you're playing Flamingo, this is XD. How do I zoom in harder on this card? So the purple matchup is really hard, right? Because they have the 10 drop if you go wide with Flamingo, but you obviously can bait board states where they have the 10 drop you, and then you can rebuild your board. But they definitely, you definitely struggle to put enough pressure on them as Crocodile to clear out the game before they can just develop these big boys and then just pound you out of the game with their really, really high attack stat. But Centaumer just allows you to, hey, you don't have the who's who?
Yeah. You're done.
I'm getting in there. So that's, again, and that's really weird. We looked at all the matchups that this deck can have: aggro, control, purple, which is, I don't even know how to classify purple. It's its own category. It's just Kaido. Centaumer seems to shine in every single category, and so therefore I think we just came to the conclusion that Centaumer is just bananas, right? And that's ignoring the fact that he lets you look through your deck, right? So obviously the skill mechanism that you need as a blue player is to definitely look through the deck quickly, know what you're looking for, try to discern those things, get those little advantages, and that all comes from practicing. The more you practice your list, the more you're comfortable with your list, the more you'll be able to look through it quickly, find out what you need, and play efficiently, because your games are going to go long when you're playing blue, and you're going to have to be keeping an eye on that timer. Definitely, timer is something that is not your friend when playing this deck, and definitely something I would encourage you playing with. Always have your phone in front of you as you play the matchup so that you can succeed and see how you're doing, see how you keep up with certain decks. So in closing statements, Fernando, would you like to add anything?
I think that definitely blue, more than any other color, benefits playtest time and understanding of different matchups. And I think that if you're someone who considers yourself very strong in theoretical play, but also mechanically in the game, and you can craft game plans like in a certain way to where it benefits you, I think that blue is the color for you going into the Treasure Cup. So definitely high skill ceiling, but it's worth it.
No, it's definitely rewards your knowledge of the game, rewards understanding. It is a very skill intensive deck, and there's a lot of factors that you have to really put in to make blue really work, that churning factor. But there's something that's good and bad to be said about that. Personally, there's a little statement that everyone's always told me: in these long tournaments, you always have to think about the fact that this is a 9-rounder, probably maybe 10. I'm gonna go with 8 to 9 rounder. So if you have to play 8 to 9 rounds and really just use all your neurons at the same time, it's going to get taxing. You're eventually going to fatigue out, and it's going to be very, very hard. And blue is a deck that, like, similar to in other game plans and other card games, you're going to fatigue out if you're doing this. It's like if you play Digimon, something akin to like a Lilith Loop, playing 8 rounds of Lilith Loop, it's very, very difficult. Not only was it a good deck, but it's just hard. It's taxing on you as a player. So if you think you're up to the task of using that brain for 8-9+ hours, then blue is certainly the deck for you. But it's definitely something you want to think about as well, because even though it's a very powerful deck, green does just as good with much less neurons activation, if you know what I'm saying. So with that, guys, I hope you guys liked the video. No hate to any green players. If you're a green player, please don't dislike this. That was just a little joke. Please don't hate me.
Hit the like and subscribe.
Hit that like and subscribe button. You know, come on, we're all friends here. If you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, leave a comment down below. If I don't answer it, Fernando might go ahead and take his time to answer any questions you guys have on the deck, or any deck builds, or any of the choices that you have changed about the deck. And as always, if you haven't joined the Pirate Crew, make sure to think about joining and subscribing. It would mean a lot. As always, guys, I will see you on the next one. Peace.
Bye.